And welcome back to Janky AF and Year of the Aerostar, episode number 124. Well, it's been a little while. I apologize. It's been a long time since an upload. A lot of things going on as always. I got to get to your comments. Just been a rough week for Beef Janky, quite honestly. However, yesterday was a bright spot because I finally got my 1993 Ford Aerostar Sport out of storage. And drove it home, drove fine, started right up, hooked up the battery, cranked right up, drove great. So that was like a really fantastic little sort of motivation for Beef Janky here. And we're going to power through and get some Year of the Aerostars up. And so you lovely viewers at home can watch, and I will try to respond to your comments. But let's just get into the van because this is going to be sort of a double feature, 124 and 125. Two vans that are very similar in sort of their spec and their just uniqueness and rareness and preservation and yada, yada, yada. So it'll be a two-part series. This is part one. And I suppose without further ado, we should just go ahead and introduce the van. So here we have rare find Ford Aerostar minivan. Listed for $4,500 in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania. Now, I was just down in Pennsylvania buying some fence posts, and I wish this had come up because perhaps I could have at least gone and seen it in person. But it is a 1987. I usually just say whatever the title is. Usually the year is listed in the title, but it was not. So there you go. It's a 1987 rare find Ford Aerostar minivan, and it is indeed a rare find. And let's get into that. So details, condition, used, fair. Now it's funny that it doesn't have the usual about this vehicle. They did it a little bit differently. I'm not sure how, but anyways, there's not a lot of in the description of about this vehicle. Brand is Ford Aerostar with a capital R. So they must have, instead of, it's funny because I'm looking on my keyboard and the A is right next to the caps lock. So isn't that funny? I can actually, this is the great part about Marketplace and Craigslist culture, is you can sort of reverse engineer, and through Aerostar sleuthing, you can tell they probably went to hit that A, they accidentally hit the caps lock, and then they hit the R, and that's why the R is in uppercase. So figured that one out. So anywho, let's read the description. Rare find, 1987 Ford Aerostar minivan with 120K miles. Has V6 engine and 5-speed manual transmission. Ding, ding, ding. Also has AC and cruise control. I'm the second owner, but haven't actually needed it for the last 8 years. That's a funny phrase. Like, I haven't actually needed either of my Aerostars, but I've drove them and I'm glad I did have them. Has been recently inspected and oil changed. That's kind of funny too. It has not had the oil change. It's been, it's just a funny turn of phrase. I like it. Oh yeah, the vehicle has been oil changed. We oil changed the vehicle. Kind of an interesting play on words, but it all makes sense. Usually we'd say inspected and has had oil changed, using, I think that's called like the passive voice. Something like that, but it's been oil changed. It's not had the oil changed on it. The whole vehicle has been oil changed. Now that would connote that maybe all the, anything that considered an oil in the car has been changed. I'm guessing this is just the engine oil, but I digress. Just the funny little, there's this thing called syntactical ambiguity. And syntax is basically like, the way things are laid out. If I'm the order of the words and the meaning that comes from the ordering. So syntactical ambiguity, you can have multiple meanings through one phrase. And that's why, clarity in writing is so important. But my spiel by now. As long as the, information is conveyed from one party to another, it's a success. Tires have good tread. Serious inquiries only, please. So, basically, that is a polite way of saying if it's up, it's available. And it is still up, so it's available. And if you're going to inquiry about this, now my inquiry would probably be a non-serious one because I don't have the capital to purchase this vehicle. However, it would be very serious. It's not serious. It's very serious because I would love to just get more information about this Aerostar. So there you have it. Obviously, The V6 engine, which I'm guessing is the 3-liter, because as we now know through our Aerostar sleuthing in this community and through some great comments by people, the Aerostar was available even from the 1986 model year with the 3-liter V6. We can now confidently say that. Now, we've also found out that the 2.8-liter V6, which we thought was offered exclusively along with the 4-cylinder fuel injected. Now the Cologne V6, we thought that was always carbureted. However, we had one fine commenter talk about how even that 2.8-liter was sometimes fuel injected as well. So in theory, this could be either the 2.8 or the 3-liter. However, my guess would be it's the 3-liter, especially in 87. So then you're a year removed between 86. So even probably more 3-liters were coming into the equation. So a V6 engine with the manual transmission, and that's really the big creme de la creme here. Now this Aerostar has many aesthetic things on it. These are actually famously, to me anyways, my least favorite Aerostar hubcaps, but that's an easy fix if you wanted to. Obviously, if you want to keep it stock, all the better. It has the sort of the more janky running board here, which I always thought looked a little, I like industrial aesthetics, but it looked a little, I don't know, slapped on to me, this running board, although it does, of course, like all running boards, had a cool aesthetic. Obviously, I like the sport style running board. And then there was a third style running board that was like sort of an in-between, not so as much of a body kit look as the sport, but a little bit more, sort of polished than this running board. It is a nice look. And that's just totally a subjective thing. The one thing I really like about it too, I love these early Aerostars. The badge was up front on your quarter panel. The two-tone's great, and you do have this little sort of little horizontal trim piece that you saw. It's got like kind of all the things thrown at it. And it has the towing style mirror. I absolutely love the towing style mirror. It sort of just adds to the sort of capable, rugged look of the Aerostar. And these ones are black. I have seen black. The ones on my 86 are more of just like a silver, aluminum or aluminium. And I like those too. Those are my preference. But I think the black looks here with a nice dark blue over light blue two-tone. It does look like your back bumper is perhaps a replacement, but because it's not painted dark blue like the front bumper. However, just the fact that they were able to find a replacement bumper, if that's the case, is wonderful. Now, I have seen someone on the one of the Ford Aerostar groups. Excuse me if I'm talking fast. I don't have my charger on me right now, and the battery is not super high on the computer, and I'm wasting time even talking about it. But if I'm rambling and sort of like spitting out words at you, I want to get this Aerostar documented as well as possible and give as much information as possible. But obviously, I'm working with a time window that I don't really know. But I will never compromise the integrity of the year of the Aerostar for any, technological reason. So bear that in mind. Okay, so right off the bat, we have a lot of really nice aesthetic things on this 87. Boom. I mean, there's kind of your money shot. There's your beautiful manual transmission shifter with this big giant boot on it. Now, I think in later years, the transmission, I think it went to like more of a flat stock. This one has this wonderful little bend in it, and it really is nice to maneuver with. It's very fun to row through the gears in these Aerostars. And I believe the shift knob got a little bit different after in 92 on, I want to say, after the interior went through a little bit of a facelift. And I think the transmission is still a Mazda unit in both versions, but I think the transmission may be slightly different in the later versions too. Still a 5-speed, but I think it has a different serial number to it. Obviously, you can see all blue interior. The blue interior is lovely. Your steering column cover is intact. It's not on my 86, so that's like a piece that is... And to actually get it on is, I think you have to remove the wheel. So that's a nice, the fact that that's on there, if you're looking for a totally complete Aerostar, is a nice touch. The seats look to be in very good condition. The carpeting looks to be in very good condition. And again, you have like, the darker blue carpets, with the lighter blue seats are a perfect, analog to, or analogy, or complementary aspect to your two-tone exterior blue. So, back in the 80s and 90s, it was the burgundy red and the sort of royal blue. And those were like any luxury car was offered. Buicks and Cadillacs, those were like the colors for whatever reason, aside from your grays and blacks. And the Aerostar continued that form, and it was, as did a lot of vehicles, but to see it in a minivan is kind of cool. And just to sort of like this color blowout, you really don't see in vehicles anymore, and I absolutely love it. Here we have another shot of it in the car wash. I love how many of these marketplace listings are shown in the car wash. It is a nice thing, it's like, okay, this vehicle's being taken care of. And you can see the electronic, you can't read it because the resolution is not great, but electronic fuel injection is what this badge says, which threw me off so much when I would see that on an 86 and it wasn't listed with a 4-cylinder, because I was like, well, the Cologne, 2.8 never had fuel injection, which we learned is not true, but also the 3-liter was offered, as I talked about. So that mystery has kind of been solved thanks to the wonderful Aerostar community out there. You get a little bit of sense of the paintwork. Now, I did see some clear coat fade, and on my 86, if you wet it down, the clear coat fade like totally goes away and it looks amazing. And then as soon as it dries, you see that clear coat fade come back, as you can see it a little bit, in this initial picture here. But I like the patina. I like the sort of sun-bleached look on a vehicle. I'm very much about it. And part of that psychologically is just because I'm afraid to own a car that's too nice. Usually they're out of my price range, and also I just figured, like Jay Leno always talks about, like he has a 300 Gullwing, which is like a, whatever, $500,000, $1 million car now, but it's all patinaed from being painted because it was a race car, and he just leaves it and kids can sit on the bumper. It doesn't matter. Like, you're not worried about it. And to me, that's such an asset of a vehicle where it's approachable and you don't have that constant anxiety of it being this like, untouchable, pristine thing. Because at the end of the day, it's a car, right? It's a utilitarian object that's meant for being used. It's a machine. It's meant to be driven. And I think anything that's too perfect kind of defeats the purpose a little bit. So that's my comments on that. It does look like the tires are relatively new. Now, it's funny they say they haven't needed it for the past 8 years, but does that mean it's been sitting for the past 8 years, or has it just been sort of like this auxiliary secondary vehicle? Because, if it hasn't really been driven in 8 years, then it probably needs a little bit of mechanical, bringing up to date. But if it's been driven, but not a lot, but consistently over the past 8 years, then, you really got yourself a screaming deal here for $4,500. Now, I talk about these little slats being not in later versions. A lot of them, the early ones, it was kind of chrome. So this does look like a later bumper because the slots are still there, but they're painted. Maybe they are chrome, I can't really tell, but I've never seen this where one of these little slots in your bumper is starting to like kind of bulge out. I've actually never seen that. Maybe you could just take them right out, and maybe that's what they did with later Aerostars. I would like to know more about the history of the bumpers specifically and what changes were made to them as time went on. Okay, now here's probably the best shot of the vehicle. This will probably be the thumbnail. Looks like we're at some sort of, probably a Wawa or a Sheetz, right? Because we're in Pennsylvania. And, you just can kind of drink it in and see it in its full glory. This dark blue over light blue combination is really stunning. And I do love those towing mirrors. And actually, they really do work in black here because it almost matches the dark blue color. I've never actually had a two-tone Aerostar, and I would sure like one day. I got to be honest, I'm a little bit more into the monochromatic because I think it shows off the shape of the Aerostar sort of in one unified piece. Now, my brown one does have some accents and striping and stuff going on, but I wouldn't call it a two-tone. But there is something about the two-tone. It really shows off this, front curved body line around your hood, and it highlights one of the few curves in the design. A lot of the design of the Aerostar is sort of like triangles and angular lines, but there is a beautiful sweeping curve that happens in one of the creases on the hood or on the quarter panel, and that is shown off very nicely with the two-tone. And it's just a very like two-tone C4 Corvettes. It's just a very 80s, 90s thing. And I really, really appreciate it. And it does look great on this one. And the fact that this is, a 5-speed, there's another shot of the seats. I mean, beautiful condition. And again, even within the seats, we have the dark blue carpets. The seat, the majority of the seat is almost like a royal blue. And then we have almost like a sky blue. So again, it's a variation on a theme. It's monochromatic, but like a loose monochromatism. So we have a primary color that is monochromatic and that's featured, but then there are variations within it. And I really, really like that as a theme and a concept and just as a visual for the driver and for anyone who's lucky enough to come in contact with this Aerostar. We don't see really the back seats, and I'm not sure if they're intact. It looks like I see some benches back there. It looks like I almost see like a carpet or a throw, which sometimes indicates that maybe they're not in the best condition. But I'll tell you, I mean, usually the front seats are in the worst condition because they get the most wear, the driver's seat in particular. But yeah, I can see them back there. They're present, which is good. We don't know the condition, but judging by the front, usually the front's the worst of it. So if these carpets are so clean, I mean, that's the amazing thing about this. Not just that it's so clean, but that it's so clean while still being driven 120,000 miles, presumably as, a family vehicle or a work vehicle or something. And they say they're only the second owner, and they've had it for 8 years, which means the original owner probably had it for quite a long time. I mean, that's this is 2000, what's 20, you can see how terrible I am at maths. 2024 minus 8, that would be 2016, right? So that would mean from 87 to 2016, that's almost 30 years the original owner had it. And obviously they took very, very good care of it. And now it's Pennsylvania. We don't know where it originally came from, but I don't see, especially with these running boards. That's another thing about these running boards is sometimes they kind of encourage rust because water gets trapped down in there. That's certainly true on my 93. And it really, really does look clean. I think it says it's been, maybe I'm getting this confused with the last listing, the second listing we're going to look at. But I mean, it must have spent some time in a garage, or maybe it was a Southern vehicle because the clear coat fade would certainly indicate that it got a lot of sun, but not a lot of, salt and things like that. So just, I mean, now I've talked super fast about everything I wanted to say. And now I'm just in this sort of, wordless space where I just, this Aerostar literally takes my words and my breath away. I mean, I want to get my 86 out because it's been neglected, to get personal here for a second, for so long. It just feels like something's not right with it, and I can't really tell what. Now, maybe it's like sort of a PTSD from it having broken down in some not so convenient locations. Actually, the only time it's really broken down is when I try to drive it back from Georgia all the way to New York, which, it's so funny. I would just get in a car and go. No, man, the only thing we did was put new tires on it, which, thank God, shout out to my buddy Chris Dermond who suggested that. And I think we changed the diff oil in it. And then, the transmission blew out. Again, a story I'll tell in full one day, which I never have for some reason. But since then, I daily drove that 86 for a while, going up and down steep hills and stuff when my other car was in the shop. And over time, now I've had it for almost 10 years, so that there's maintenance things. And obviously it's had oil changes. It had a starter solenoid put in. It's like sort of a little pigtail electrical thing because some of the electronics were going on it. And I guess it has broken down on me a few times. But the thing has been so neglected and it just keeps on going. And now I feel like there's something going on where, again, the temperature gauge doesn't work on it. So I bought a infrared thermometer. I'm going to shoot at it to see if it's overheating at all. But it seems like it gets tired very quickly. I don't know if the gearbox is getting hot because seems like it won't shift as good or as easily when it's getting warm. If you have any, insights into what my problem may be. But I think it's one of those things where you need to find a specialist. And actually my good buddy Evan, who I sold my other 86 to, the blue one, he found a shop, he thinks, where there's one guy there that loves these Aerostars. And so he's going to go there, have a bunch of service done on it, report back to me. If all sounds well, I think I'm just going to send it up there and say, just go through it, get the gauges working again, drive it, see if you can notice anything going on with it, see if it needs maintenance, and then routine maintenance. Just, kind of get it sorted. And unfortunately, I'm not mechanically enough inclined where I can just diagnose problems and fix them preemptively. So, not to mention, I'm just so busy right now that I couldn't really take a week off to just tinker around with this thing and take it apart. So sometimes you got to sort of make the money doing your expertise and then pay the person who is an expert in their field. So, but, all that is to say that driving this manual transmission, it's so fun. I can't describe it to you. The fact that it's a 5-speed, 5 forward gears, as my father likes to say, is really remarkable because a lot of cars from this era, even some sports cars, were 4 speeds. So the fact that you get that fifth speed, which is basically just like an overdrive gear. Now you spend a lot of your time between second and third gear, but it's not like really accelerating quickly, but it pulls pretty nice. Like if you get out of first gear and you pop it into second, you're going maybe 10, 15 miles an hour, and you really give it the go in second and give it the go to the third, you can get up to 45, 50 miles an hour, which on a lot of country roads is a perfectly good amount of speed to be carrying. And it really goes, and it's really fun, and it has a ton of body roll, and it slams off the railroad tracks or bumps in the road. Now, I'm sure my suspension probably needs work too, because these were, when you read reviews of these back in the day, they were said to have kind of a bit of a plush ride, especially compared to most vans. And I think that's true for the most part, because even like my 93, they're a little floaty when you drive them. You can feel how tall they are, and they kind of like float a little bit, almost like an old Buick or something. But then when you actually hit the bumps, it's quite a little bit more jarring than it would be in a car like that. But on smooth roads, they really are a delight to drive. And they're comfortable. The seats kind of like hug you in. You're in this kind of tall driving position, but not like a school bus where you feel like you're totally sitting on top of it. It's really just again, there's a reason why I'm doing this series. I love the Aerostar. It's not just the looks, it's not just the history, it's not just like the cool design cues that are underappreciated and very of their time, but also timeless, and the simplicity. It's the driving experience too. Now, no, they're not fast. Of course they're not fast. But I do find that they're, especially with the manual transmission, more of an engaging vehicle than you would think, because they're of that time too, especially these early Aerostars in the late 80s, mid to late 80s. You feel how mechanical they are. My 4-cylinder actually has a wonderful exhaust note. It's like kind of burbly, kind of farty, like it's got some body to it. So in a rear-wheel drive, with a manual transmission, they check all the boxes, and you wouldn't necessarily think so, but they really do. So this is just talking about it. It's already sort of lifted and brightened my day. So there you have it. There's a little bit of, if you haven't had the pleasure of driving an Aerostar, specifically a manual transmission one, I mean, $4,500. What can you buy for that kind of money in this condition? Now, you can get a ratty old C4 Corvette for $4,500, which I would also totally encourage. I would love to have one of those one day. But, to get something this nice, in this good condition, especially in the Northeast with no rust on it, that's a manual transmission, and then on top of that, you can take this car camping. You can haul lumber in it. If you're getting this as a second vehicle, just like a bop around vehicle, it can be a totally, what's the word I'm looking for? Excuse me. Totally utilitarian vehicle. You can take it to Home Depot if you need to haul stuff, even if you need to tow stuff. I mean, I don't know if I would tow 5,000 pounds with this thing. That would be a little, but it's factory rated 4,800 pounds. So you could do it, especially if you're just doing small trips. Got to move a lawnmower, tow something around town. Tons of space in the back, more than you'd realize. You could take it to concerts and camp out in it. And in addition to all that, you have this beautiful classic car that you'll get comments on. If you're into that, you could take it to car shows, and you get more attention than you realize. It's one of those little, sort of unsung heroes where people don't really realize how much they like them until, they'll engage you in conversation. All of a sudden, they'll have a story. Oh yeah, my grandpa had one of these. We had 2 of these in our family growing up. Like, we had a lot of memories in it. So the Aerostar's place in the sort of collective unconscious is much greater, because at one time these things were ubiquitous, and I have people sending me videos all the time. Oh, you should see it in this show. It's in this movie. There's one in Fast and the Furious in one of these scenes. If you look closely, I think behind that orange Supra, or maybe when they're overtaking a tractor trailer, there's an Aerostar. Like, they're everywhere. It's almost like Where's Waldo? They may be hiding out, but they're there. They were witness to so much of our culture in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. And so for that reason, they're sort of this historical landmark too. And I know I'm getting a little bit grandiose here, but that's the spirit of this program. I mean, if you're watching this, you probably have some of these sort of irrational, and of course we can rationalize it, but trying to be objective about this, sort of like irrational, feelings of affection for this just 90s minivan, and the people who made it and the people who drove them. And the fact that they're still, and again, I can't shoot enough of these episodes. I can't get to these things fast enough because they sell quickly. That's the other thing. Like, they sell quickly and they're all over Marketplace. And now I'm fortunate enough to have a little bit of a community. So I have people sending these to me. So maybe I see a little bit more than the average person. But boy, they are out there and they survive cash for clunkers, obviously. People held on to them. That's the other thing. I think, I would love to, if you could just have all the knowledge in the world, find out, what percentage of Aerostars got sent to cash for clunkers versus other models. And I would be willing to bet that Aerostars at a higher rate were preserved and saved by their owners than other cars and were not traded in for other cars, because I think a lot of people that had them really appreciated them for what they were and understood that they should be held on to and that they were a worthwhile vehicle, just to be preserved. And so obviously, here's another example right there. We're doing, we're going to get at least 366 episodes of this series, and we'll see what happens if and when we get to that milestone. But, you really, if you want to find an Aerostar, like, I look at, I guess like right now it's still early enough, even though it's 2024, that you can find a model of pretty much anything out there if you really want to. But I was listening to regular car reviews and they were talking about the Eagle Vision, I believe it was, the Dodge Intrepid badge job car. And, I searched for those and there was like one really nice one. But other than that, it was like maybe one junker car and then there wasn't really a lot out there. Now, did they make 2 million Eagle Visions like they made of the Aerostar? Probably not. But it's still, even like, Dodge Stratus, like they're out there too. But I don't know, maybe if I really looked and tried to hone in on one vehicle, I could maybe find as many, because I am a little bit biased. But for how forgettable, even a lot of people know about those cars, or they have the Dodge Stratus had the Will Ferrell thing. Also, they made Plymouth Breezes and Chrysler Cirrus. So there's kind of 3 examples out there. NA Miatas, there's all these cars that they have their following and they have their dedication. Even Astrovans, which the Aerostar lives in the shadow of. You'll see people talking about Astrovans. But I just don't see, and there are groups on Facebook, so I'm not trying to make myself out to be some person. I'm like, discover the secret that no one knows about. Obviously, there's people that own 20 of them, people that have owned 15 of them. So I'm not the only one, and I stand on the shoulders of other giants who came before me and that lauded this vehicle. So, take my ego out of it, but I still think the Aerostar is just this. It's still, for how great it is and how many classic car sort of boxes it checks, I still feel like it's criminally underrated and underappreciated, and so. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that those of us who are kind of like into this van, the nice thing is there's not a lot of speculation, so the prices stay low, and maybe we just kind of keep this a nice little thing to ourselves. And for the price of some classic Dodge Viper or Chevy Corvette, or you can go out and buy yourself a whole fleet of Aerostars. So I think that's kind of cool. So there you have it. I've managed to filibuster here long enough. I wish there was some more pictures, but not a bad smattering of photos. You get to see the basics. You get to see how clean everything is. And, if you're really serious about inquiring, you could make a serious inquiry to this person. And, $4,500, maybe there's some wiggle room there. I don't know. But for, in the category of cream puff Aerostars, which I would put this. It's got a little clear coat fade, sure, but I would say this is in the, above the 90th percentile. There goes my low battery icon. A 90th percentile of, nicest Aerostars. And then particularly, and we got all this crap coming up on our screen, update your software, blah, blah, blah. We keep it very real and janky here on Janky AF. You could do a lot worse, and especially in that manual transmission category. That's such a, like all cars, and that's another way the Aerostar sort of fits into the classic car compendium. It was offered with that option, and so you could do a lot worse. And if even maybe you get this, maybe you get it for $4,000. That's half the price of what really nice Aerostars are going for on the market. And even if you wanted to get a little bit of repaint or touch up or whatever, definitely less than $10,000, you're in for like a really, really nice classic car. Get the rear bumper painted, etc. And something that, It is a rare find, like the description says. Now, again, we're finding them out there, so it's not like impossible. It's not unobtainium, but it's just the right amount of rarity where if you have one of these, like there's not going to be that many of them out there left. An 87, great year, original style grille, as we can see in this photo. So, I mean, just the absolute gem. So I'll stop talking about it now. Hopefully this has given you a little bit of a window into this beautiful, beautiful Aerostar. I really hope, and I got to respond to comments. I apologize, but my favorite thing is when someone sees a video of a year of the Aerostar and they say, oh, I bought this van. I love that so much because now we're actually kind of connecting people to these listings. And hopefully, we should start, maybe we should start on like VinWiki, like a list of like a registry of like vehicles on Year of the Aerostar and how many of them are still out there or something like that. If I had more time, maybe I would work on something like that. But for now, we have this digital record of everything. And so maybe someone will buy this. And if you do, please let me know. I would love to, hear your impressions of it and, kind of keep tabs on it, keep it in the family, so to speak. And that's that. Okay, we'll wrap up. We have another episode 125 when I figure out how to charge my computer. Will be, I think, my personal opinion, I put this one first because I wanted to finish with this next one. And it's just like a real gem. Now, hopefully the listing is still up. I did take archive pictures because I usually don't do that. But this was one I could not resist. And the great Ronnie, 1989 Aerostar, sent it to me. So Janky, do thank you to him. And worst comes to worst, we'll at least cobble together some archival photos to do an episode of it. But hopefully the original listing's still up. I can shoot it from the actual full listing. So we'll find out very soon. And that will be coming to you. I want to do this double feature, and I think I'll just put these episodes out one after another. I don't care about the views or anything like that. If it hurts my saturation, blah, 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 I don't care. It's been way too long since we did a post, so we're going to do 2 really amazing Aerostars back to back here on Year of the Aerostar. And like I always say, there will be another one coming very soon, and indeed it will be coming very, very soon after this one goes live. So, with all that being said, really appreciate everyone out there commenting and just talking shop about the Aerostar. It warms my heart. And, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in life. And, in the meantime, and in outside of the concept of time itself lies the Ford Aerostar, and we're very grateful for that. So that will conclude this episode of Year of the Aerostar here on JKF. We'll have another one coming for you very soon, and until then, Janky do thanky.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.